An analysis of the situation on the Huliaipol and Orikhiv fronts. The bloody rampage of the enemy army continues here as well. On the Huliaipol front, enemy aircraft carried out strikes on the areas of the settlements of Olhivske, Poltavka and Huliaipol. On the Orikhiv front, the aggressors launched airstrikes on the areas of the settlements of Orikhiv and Novoandrivka. They plant gardens under shelling, patch up roofs after strikes, and flatly refuse to leave their native Huliaipole. About 1,000 people remain in this frontline city in the Zaporizhzhia region. You won't see any intact houses on the streets anymore. Everything has been destroyed by enemy artillery and air bombs. But the biggest problem is the drones. TSN correspondent Kira Oves saw with her own eyes how the people of Huliaipol are living now.
On the street where life once bustled, there are now only ruins.
There are neighbors here and there is hail.
Here, grads hit the neighbors. By the way, you can still see the fragments sticking out over there.
How many people in total used to live on this street?
Well, there were 2 or 3 people in each house. Just imagine, it's a small street, maybe 10 or 20 houses, so about 40 people lived here at the start of the war. At the beginning of the war, there were 20 to 40 people living here.
But at this moment, Vitaly is the only resident here. On weekdays, he works at the city council, and on weekends, he goes to the safer city of Zaporizhzhia. An enemy shell could hit here at any moment. His pets warn him when danger is approaching.
I have 3 dogs, and they're like little bells because their intuition or hearing is very well developed. So, when something is about to land on our side, they hide really well, sometimes even running into the house.
Here, under constant shelling and just 7 kilometers from the occupiers, about 1,000 people live, including the Vov couple. Vasily and Vera have been married for 60 years. They do everything together, patching up holes in the windows after shelling and planting vegetables.
We're not lazy, we get things done. If something explodes, we run away, then we come back out again.
The couple's farm is small, but they do have dogs and chickens. After one of the shellings, one of the chickens got lost, but in the end, they found her. And not just her, the woman says happily.
Let them take a look at your babies. She brought 7 chicks, hid away, and we didn't even know where she was. So yesterday, Grandpa and I fenced it off, and now she's sitting here.
There hasn't been electricity or water in the city for a long time. All the utilities were destroyed by the Russians. You won't see a single surviving apartment building, says Vyacheslav, the community police officer. He says it hurts to watch the enemy destroy his hometown.
First, cluster munitions hit my apartment, damaging the windows and walls. Then a Grad rocket struck, broke through the floor slab and tore through the bedroom.
In addition to artillery and air bombs, the Russians are attacking the city with dozens of FPV drones. It's dangerous to move around the streets.
In one day, they paid for it. In one day, we counted more than 86 drones. Any vehicle that moves, if they see it, they can hit it without hesitation. That is, they don't think about who is driving there, a soldier or a civilian or a policeman or an emergency services worker or someone else. They don't care.
Every day a police officer drives around to visit elderly people and tries to persuade them to leave for safer places. But all they get in response are excuses.
You're not planning to leave Huliaipol? Where would I go and to whom? The only place I'll be leaving for is over there, to the crosses, to my wife. I've already reserved a spot there.
The police officer doesn't know what words to use to convince them. He admits that even his own father flatly refuses to leave Huliaipol.
I can't even do anything about my own father, honestly.
No. I tell him 300 times a day, leave, let me take you somewhere, I'll take you to Zaporizhzhia. No, I don't want to. My father also worked in the police. At the moment, he is retired.
And even though living in Huliaipol is a daily risk, the residents of the city knowingly accept it. After all, they say they believe in victory and are trying to do everything so that their city will live to see it.
Now let's analyze in detail the situation on the Kupiansk and Lyman fronts. Let's be honest, this is yet another sacred goal for Putin and his entire gang. Accordingly, the situation here is also extremely tense. On the Kupiansk front, the enemy attacked 5 times in the areas of the settlements of Stepnaya Novoselka, Peshanaya, and Zelenaya Rosha. 4 clashes are still ongoing. On the Lyman front, over the course of the day, the invading army launched 10 attacks on Ukrainian positions in the areas of Grekovka, Novy Mir, Redkodob, Karpovka, Zelenaya Dolina, Torsko, and towards Grigorievka. 3 clashes are still ongoing. Our soldiers are holding the defense steadfastly and inflicting losses on the enemy. Meanwhile, the Ukrainian armed forces have destroyed one of Russia's most dangerous electronic warfare stations. in the Kharkiv region. Border Guard pilots from the Phoenix unit eliminated the enemy's R-330 Zytel electronic warfare system. But there is also troubling news. The Russian occupiers have intensified their offensive on the front, and Russia has handed over tons of gold bars to an Iranian company. This is a kind of barter for military equipment. Meanwhile, North Korea has supplied Moscow with up to 9 million shells. Our journalists know all the details.
The Ukrainian armed forces have successfully taken out Russia's most advanced electronic warfare system, the Borisogledsk-2. Fighters from the 413th Raid Battalion detected the station and struck it from a distance of about 70 kilometers. The occupiers have said goodbye to yet another electronic warfare system. Fighters from the border unit destroyed the Russian electronic warfare system R-330 Zytel with precise strikes from kamikaze drones, which the occupiers had tried to hide among the buildings. Meanwhile, in the Russian city of Vladivostok, in the area of Desantnaya Bay, where military equipment is loaded and unloaded, explosions have occurred. Law enforcement agencies and special services quickly cordoned off the area, set up checkpoints, and temporarily suspended traffic. However, the reasons for the incident have not been disclosed.
Something was definitely happening, yes. A police car sped by, followed by 3 ambulances. Most likely it was that situation happening at Shimora. Nothing is clear, but it's very interesting.
And while the cause of the explosions is still being sought in Vladivostok, Germany has approved new military aid to Ukraine amounting to 5 billion euros, which includes funding for long-range Ukrainian-made weapons, ammunition supplies, and more.
First and foremost, this concerns Germany's funding of long-range weaponry in Ukraine. Moreover, it specifically refers to Ukrainian-developed systems. In addition, it is reported that the German side will supply Ukraine's defense forces with artillery shells, air defense systems, ground-based weaponry, small arms, and accordingly, satellite communications.
Meanwhile, against the backdrop of negotiations, Russia has intensified its offensive and achieved its most significant gains since January, according to the BBC. In particular, the article notes that the city of Rodinske, which is 15 kilometers from Pokrovsk, is literally swarming with enemy drones. At the same time, since the beginning of the year, Russian occupiers' losses have exceeded 190,000 people.
At the moment, the Russians' tactical gains amount to about 100 square kilometers. And it should be noted that the greatest tactical successes of the Russian occupation forces were recorded in November 2024. This was an advance into Ukrainian territory covering up to 750 square kilometers. Moreover, it should be noted that in the month of April, the Russians had their smallest tactical gains.
Russia has also begun using new Danim drones against Ukraine. However, the company that once manufactured them has long since ceased to exist. In other words, the enemy does not have significant stockpiles of these targets.
This information should be treated with great caution because apparently it may actually refer to Iranian hybrids equipped with jet engines. If this information is confirmed, then it will undoubtedly indicate that the Russian Federation has acquired strike capabilities with a range of about 400 kilometers.
And Moscow transferred nearly 2 tons of gold bars to an Iranian company totaling around $104 million as payment for the Shahed 136 attack drones.
If this information is confirmed, 104 million is roughly equivalent to 2 to 2,500 Shaheds. For context, the Alabuga plant, which was built with the participation of Iranian specialists, currently has the capacity to produce about 10,000 Russian Giran-2 drones. This is a copy of the Shahed 136. In other words, we're talking about the possible transfer by Iran of drones to the Russian Federation in quantities comparable to the plant's quarterly output in Yelabuga.
In addition to its cooperation with Iran, the Kremlin continues to receive weapons from North Korea. North Korea may have supplied Russia with up to 9 million artillery shells and at least 100 missiles in just the past year and a half. In exchange for this assistance, Putin gave Kim Jong-un at least one vehicle equipped with a Panzer-class air defense system.
Let me remind you, until quite recently, reports mentioned a maximum of 5 million shells that may have been supplied by North Korea. But even 5 million shells raises certain questions. But even taking into account the modernization of Rheinmetall's production and the U.S. military-industrial complex, the total number of munitions produced by the defense industries of Europe and the United States is about 1,200,000. That's why questions arise about where North Korea got 9 million shells, which they supposedly transferred to the Russian Federation.